Welcome to the Lawless Astrology channel. I'm excited. I've got Celeste Brooks, master astrologer, back to talk about politics for the month of October with me here on the Lawless Astrology channel. So welcome, Celeste.
Hi, Dabney. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you're a fan favorite. So I'm excited that you're here. And for those of you that don't typically watch this channel, I'm an evolutionary astrologer. I look at ways that the cosmos can support us to live a more peaceful, grounded life. And Celeste, why don't you plug and talk about all of the amazing things that you have? You've got a retreat in Park City coming up, and you've got a blog, and you've got a podcast. So talk about all the things that you have so people can find you. And then I will also list it in the description as well.
Thank you so much. So I'm Celeste Brooks of Astrology by Celeste. I'm an astrologer and a coach and an intuitive, and my podcast is called the Celestial Insights Podcast to help you navigate the energies of the week. I love mundane astrology, so I try to put in events in the news as well as how it may show up for you personally. I am one of the faculty members at the Organization of Professional Astrology retreat on October 16th through 21st in Park City, Utah. And I'll be teaching everything about the moon in my moon mastery program. So if you are interested, there's still a space left. So jump on in. You can go to opaastrology.org. I'll also be speaking about next year's shift at the speaker series into the North Node going into Pisces. So that's something that may be of interest to people as well. But you can find everything about me at astrologybyceleste.com. And yeah, I have a blog there and all kinds of great stuff. Yeah, you can grab the 2025 Wise Skies calendar so that you can have all the transits on your phone or laptop in the shop if you are so interested.
Awesome. So yeah, I'll have all of the links for everything below. And I'm going to be at OPA, the retreat as well. So I'm going to see Celeste. We're going to share a car. And very excited to talk about this crazy month. So just everybody take a big breath and ground, because if you've been feeling stressed or out of sorts, that is not weird. There is a lot going on up in the skies. And so I think what we're going to start with is we're going to talk about the October 2nd eclipse that just happened yesterday, but it's eclipse season, which means we're going to be feeling it all month long, maybe even longer, but it's definitely going to be with us through the election. So this energy is definitely something that we need to look at. So give me 1 second and I am going to pop open this. I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Do you see that, Celeste?
Yes.
Okay. So this was the eclipse that took place yesterday. It was in Libra. I've done a couple videos on it. I'm sure Celeste has graced us with all sorts of information about this as well. It was in the sign of Libra. It had a lot to do with releasing things that no longer serve us and kind of taking a more assertive approach, drawing boundaries around our own emotional health and getting our needs met. And so from a political standpoint, what I think is really interesting is that Jack Smith, right on cue, put out, or I should say Judge Chutkin released Jack Smith's 180-page indictment that had all of the things that they were going to have lay out in the trial for Trump for the January 6th trial. So if anybody isn't really aware what was going on, I think everybody that watches this channel probably has an idea, but what happened was he was indicted. Then it got on hold while the Supreme Court decided whether or not he had immunity. And they said, we think he has immunity for some things. And so they kicked it back down to the lower courts. And Judge Chutkin basically said, okay, well then let's see we have to see all the evidence to decide what's going to be considered immune and what isn't. And so Jack Smith filed basically the entire kind of report that you would file almost after the trial. So kind of tipping his hand, like, here's all the evidence that we have. And this comes out right on this eclipse. So what do you make of that, Celeste? I think that's kind of incredible timing.
It is because legal affairs are a ninth house topic. And you can see on the chart that the eclipse, the sun and the moon, are in Libra in the ninth house. And we're talking about a documents case. Mercury rules documents. And yeah, and like right the day before the eclipse, Mercury went cazimi, so went through the heart of the sun. And that speaks to, being a rebirth. So this is like a rebirth of his case because of the immunity ruling. And some really interesting things came out about how combative Trump was around the time of the January 6th, and you see the eclipse is square Mars. Mars in Cancer. You get this imagery of being combative. Yeah, and the January 6th was a party. Come down to the Capitol. It'll be a wild time, or whatever he said. Venus is at the midheaven in the sign of Scorpio. So it's like coming together for a party in order to Scorpio, like do something piercing or, kind of attacking. And yeah. And
So what
he
I think is,
almost got Mike Pence killed, and Mike Pence's partner was in a scorpionic life or death situation as a result of his actions.
right, right. And we'll talk about, just we'll touch on the debate in a second. But what I think is interesting about this is, so we look at, what is the ruler of Libra? So this eclipse is in the sign of Libra. The ruler of Libra is Venus. And we see Venus. So the Venus is going to have a very big role in this eclipse. And it's in the sign of Scorpio. And that's secrets being revealed, information coming out. And it's right up there in the 10th house. We set this for Washington, D.C. So it's right up there on that 10th house. So this is kind of like the big reveal, right? Like this is one of those, I wouldn't even call it an October surprise. I think we're going to be in for some serious twists and turns. I think October is going to be a very tumultuous, emotionally draining month. But what I will say is we can't ignore the fact that this very important information that has the potential to really change the outcome of the election for some people dropped on the eclipse, like that it became public, in the public record, part of history on the eclipse. I also think it's interesting because I have opinions. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. I'm not a huge fan of Merrick Garland. Sorry if there's Garland fans out there. I do believe that the pattern here of Libra, this Libra can be a little too concerned with appearances and a little too concerned with doing things the way we've always done them, and really perceptions. And so I think that, there's a lot out there about how in 2022, 2021, there wasn't really an urgency to prosecute Trump because they wanted to appear very, non-biased. They wanted to kind of like play, they wanted to say that this was, they wanted to get things back to normal, basically. They just didn't want to appear like they were prejudiced toward the Democrats. They were ignoring the law, basically. They were ignoring the law. After the January 6th committee with Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and all of the Democrats, he couldn't ignore it any longer because Trump's allies people, aides like Cassidy Hutchinson, were out there saying, this is what happened. These were the crimes. This is the reality. And so now here we are kind of full circle where we are releasing that we can no longer just try to gloss over everything and make everything pretty and perceptions. It's like Scorpio, the truth has to come out, right? And it's opposed this north node in Aries where it's like we have to have our voice heard. We have to take care of ourselves. And squaring the Mars in Cancer, that's protecting our country, right? Cancer
Mhm.
is the homeland, and so we have to protect our homeland. So I don't know what you think about all that, Celeste, but that's
Yeah,
kind of
and
my
the south
interpretation.
node next to the eclipse, you also talked about it being an emptying out or releasing. So it released all this information, yeah, on the day. It's really important. I have a question. What is 21 degrees? What is that? Is that an asteroid or a fixed star that says SUC?
Oh, that is a point. It's the lot of success. So
Ah,
I was taking a class in zodiacal releasing, and so I've been learning how to do more zodiacal releasing. So I've kind of been playing a little bit with the lot of success and the lot of spirit. So
oh, okay.
it's
Well,
not a
hopefully that means Jack Smith is going to have some success.
yeah.
And
Well,
I want to say
Jupiter
something
right there.
else
Yeah.
before we move on. So today, I don't know if you saw it, but a woman who was a county clerk from Colorado was sentenced to 9 years in prison for her role in trying to overturn the election. She had given something to some My Pillow person, and yeah, she's got 9 years in prison. So you see Venus and Scorpio at the top of that chart, a woman who was involved in this conspiracy. Scorpio is related to conspiracy. And you see that trine to Saturn. So Saturn rules prisons, and Saturn in Pisces. Ooh, you're really in the dumps. So this woman going down the tubes for what she's done previously is also, you can see on of the nature of this in
Yeah.
the
And
her
also,
clip story.
with the Scorpio, or excuse me, the Cancer in Mars, she was a protector of elections, like Cancer again, like protector of our country, and it's squaring the nodes. So that's incredibly karmic, where it's
Mhm.
like, and if you read like what the judge said, it was just she was unrepentant and she couldn't control her outbursts, and so a lot of that kind of thing just kind of goes back to this. So I know, Celeste, you wanted to kind of touch base briefly on, I don't have the chart for it, but the day before was the debate. And
Yeah.
so you want to kind of just give your quick, punditry about the astrological punditry about the debate before I pull up the next chart.
Yeah, so at the debate, the ascendant, so you can cast a chart for the event, was a Gemini rising. So that meant Mercury ruled the chart of the debate, and Mercury's in Libra, a sign that's humane. Air signs are humane and cordial and trying to find like agreement and things like that, and they kept saying to each other, I agree with you. And like the debate was very cordial, and they stuck to policies rather than personal attacks. Now, JD Vance was the more slick and better speaker of the debate. Tim Walz is a Aries, and the North Node's on his Mars, and I think that kind of stimulated his nervousness. And he was nervous, but he did all right with the debate as well. So some people felt nobody won. JD Vance definitely won on style points. Tim Walz on, factual points. So
One of the things,
yeah.
the only thing that I took note of was that it was a void of course moon, and a lot of times you don't want, like, not much comes of a void of course mode. And that's the whole thing, is like you try not to plan specifically big things that you want change to happen. Like if you're, applying for a job, you try not to do it in a void of course moon. But where if you're filing your taxes, you might do that. You might file it during a void of course moon because you don't want anything to happen. So, I feel like it was, less than a 24-hour news cycle. I agree with you. I think that maybe JD Vance rehabilitated his image a little bit with people who are not in the know, but I think it was quickly overshadowed by the eclipse
Mhm.
energy. I have not seen as much in the news as I would have liked to have about this indictment, which is kind of a bummer, but the story's not over. Like that's the thing with eclipses, is like something happens, but this is something we're going to be dealing with for a long time, and more information is going to become public and it's going to sink in over time, is what I would say. So now,
Yeah, eclipses open a 6 month cycle, even though a lot of stuff will happen this month, but we're still unfolding.
yeah. So
Mhm.
one of the things that we were going to talk about too is that we have some planets that are going retrograde. We have some planets that are going direct. And so on October 9th, Jupiter is going to be going retrograde. So do you want to kick us off with that, Celeste, and what you
Yeah,
see?
yeah. So there are a couple things I want to say in terms of, I want to back up a little bit. So from October 4th through October 8th. There's really interesting astrology I think we should be paying attention to. So Venus is going to trine Saturn in Pisces, and then between then and the 8th, she's separating from Saturn and applying to Mars. So that's called besiegement. So Venus in Scorpio, the sign of her detriment, where she does not like to be, where she can do extreme and ineffective things, but also like really raring to go, is that's happening. And Mars and Saturn are the malefic. So really pay attention to stories we're seeing around that time related to Venus topics, partnerships. The president and the executive branch of the United States is represented by Venus because we have Libra on our midheaven. And Israel is a Libra rising and is on the offensive in the war in the Middle East. So, let's see and being besieged is like hostile forces on both sides. Uh, yeah, we'll see what happens in relationship
Yeah, and that's definitely
because
not something we talked about with the October 2nd eclipse, but as you say, Israel is a Libra nation. And when the first set of eclipses with this axis was October 7th last year, when Hamas first invaded Israel. So it's really crazy to see how the escalation in the Middle East. And I think that again, much like the Jack Smith report, when something happens, I don't know. I did a video yesterday about waking up with all this anxiety about everything that's going on in the world, and like how that Mars in Cancer really brings up memories, and like memories from not feeling safe, whether it's past lives or childhood or, current affairs. And right now, that's something we can't ignore, is that I think that the story in the Middle East is only going to be gaining momentum in our lives for years to come, and we are going to be playing a role in that. What the role looks like is still unfolding, but it's escalating quickly for sure.
And the North Node is in Aries, amplifying conflict. The South Node in Libra, draining diplomacy, the ability to find win-win solutions and to come to a conclusion. So yeah, it's very worrisome. Mm.
And things like come to a head, right? Like during eclipse
Yeah, and
season, things come to a head.
on Sunday, so yeah, the 6th, there's a waxing crescent moon at 29 degrees of Scorpio, while we have, this grand trine, and I call it dirty water, turbulent water, contaminated water. So, look, there could be some big news this weekend, or Monday, related to what's going on. I wrote down, you sunk my battleship this when I started preparing for 2024. So hopefully there won't be a conflict. It could be anywhere related to um, something on the seas. I know there was like a passenger boat that flipped over in the Congo or something, and a bunch of people unfortunately drowned. But the water is a bit of a dangerous place right now. Do not leave your child unattended in the bathtub, is something I said on my moon memo. Yeah, be really careful with drugs and alcohol. Yeah, you can just not be aware of how dangerous water can be right now.
Yeah, and what's really, yeah, kind of echoing that, because if we back up to last month where we had the full moon eclipse, which full moons, kind of bring things to fruition, that was in Pisces, which was a water sign. And now here we're a new moon, something that we can't fully see what's coming, but that's, in the axis of, like Celeste said, like war versus peace. Libra and Aries, that's kind of the axis of, like, do we fight for what we believe in? Do we just try to get along and hope it goes away? The diplomacy aspect. So there's so many moving pieces of the puzzle right now. And I think that that's what is so hard about October. October was always going to be, if you listen to any astrologers, October was always going to be this very intense month. Like I mentioned, I did take a class in zodiacal releasing, and I don't want to get into that too much here, but I will say that I have been sort of following a little bit more the zodiacal releasing, and there is kind of an echo of when our former president, when there was an attempt on his life, there could be something in that, not predicting it. I don't want anything like that to happen, but there is potential for more of that kind of upheaval and crazy people, like, not holding it together. And like around that October 6th time frame, there does seem to be a lot of tension in his chart as well.
Yeah, he's got Uranus squaring his Mars conjunct his ascendant, so his physical body
Right.
is at risk for unexpected upheaval. Let's hope not. I want him
Right.
live and healthy on election day. Yeah.
Yes, like the meme says, we want him here so Kamala Harris can beat him.
Exactly.
And we also like are decent humans that don't wish
Yeah, don't wish
anyone
harm on
or harm,
anyone.
right?
Yes.
So, okay, so don't leave me nasty messages. I'm not predicting, I'm just looking at the
No,
astrology.
he's and I think, they know that, so they're being extra careful about his security after, the two incidents.
Absolutely. So, okay, so it sounds like some sort of bumpy roads leading up to this Jupiter retrograde, different energies that we all will have to deal with, but just kind of, regulate your nervous system, breathe, do what you have to do during this time to keep yourself non-reactive. And as the month goes on, that's going to be a bigger theme, where it's like there's so many things that we can react to, where we're being pulled, like, oh my god, that's so exciting, this happened, oh my god, that's so awful, this happened. Like, just try to find your stasis point, because we've got a long couple months before
Mhm.
things start to kind of unfold a little bit more peacefully. Not that it's looking super peaceful in the future, but it's different, at least, than it is
Mhm.
now. Okay.
Yeah, there's going to be some kind of shock and awe around this Jupiter retrograde, So a retrograde is when the planet that's moving along through the zodiac, it's an optical illusion, but it looks like it stops and then starts to go backwards, and then it'll stop and go forward. So there's an area in your chart which will get 3 hits. This one is really important. So Jupiter is in the sign of its detriment in Gemini. Now, Gemini is an air sign where it can do what it does, and it can't function as well as it likes to. And Jupiter is about abundance and the truth. It also makes everything bigger, and it's conjunct the Mars of the United States in our seventh house of our partners as well as our open enemies. So I'm wondering if this has something to do with escalating violence in Israel. It could have something to do with, it's up there at the top of the chart. I think it could even be something like another storm is a possibility. Jupiter is an air sign, like that's really, really windy, but there may be some kind of shock and awe that we see
And
at
at that
this
moment,
time.
right, Uranus is right on the midheaven, which would,
Hmm.
say unpredictability, like something coming in that we don't expect to happen,
Hmm.
that has themes around the earth. um, I would also kind of reiterate that Jupiter in Gemini is like doing things multiple times, like having to go back and do something again. Like you think you're finished with something, but nope, there is, there's more to come. And this also could be a time where we get more information, like the second round of information
Yeah.
from that indictment as well. There could be more that comes out, because it's kind of like an ongoing story.
Hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Venus, which rules the midheaven in this chart in the third house. So that's about communication, the mail, transportation. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see what comes of this. And it's Venus is separating from Mars, so there may have been some Venus Mars type event that has happened. Yeah. Can I tell a great story?
Yeah. Are you done with this chart? Can I?
Well, I want to hold on for 1 second.
Okay.
So, so when Venus, excuse me, when I was in Mexico, when Mercury and Leo, was it Mercury and Leo? No.
Hmm.
Mercury and Virgo was squaring Jupiter and Gemini. And Mercury and Virgo, paperwork. Jupiter is like takes you on a long journey and has to do with foreign affairs and things. And I was at a resort and people had to go back to the border to do something around their paperwork. Their passports weren't stamped properly. So they had to do something twice. And I had said something about, I have an important announcement, dust yourself off and try again. So that's an example about Jupiter and Gemini on long distance travel, having to deal with paperwork twice.
Yes, that's a very good example. And then I just also, something came to me with this grand trine in water,
Mhm.
about maybe more information is going to come out with Diddy as well. So I know that's not
Oh
politics,
yeah.
but
So there,
I see that
uh-huh.
as like because here we have again Pluto in Scorpio in the third house, Saturn in Pisces, Saturn, bringing kind of accountability, Mars, you know, in Cancer, this is the protector of, women. So I don't know, something kind of came to me that something additional might drop on that front.
Well, Jupiter has to do with legal things as well, and it's a law, ethics, and retrogrades pull back the tape so we can see what's underneath. So there could be another big name who's indicted or something like that.
Right. Right.
Yeah, Uranus, and it's going to be a big star. That I think you're right. Uranus, yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I'm
you're
not
right
usually
about
the
that.
predictive astrologer. I'm usually more the like, oh, we can all be better together. But every once in a while, something pops into my head when I see a chart, and I'm like, ooh, I think something's coming. So that might be something.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I
they do
think you're
say
right.
that they've got some big names that you know, and how, they're going to come out eventually here. So this is
Mhm.
another thing. It's like a rock and sock'em October. Like, don't think for a second that it's going to slow down. Like, the news cycles we have been going through are insane, but they are going to continue to be insane as far as I can tell. So, all right.
Yes, yeah. So hold on to your hat. It's so important to stay grounded, like you were saying earlier, despite all this crazy upheaval that's going on, and understand what you can control and what you can't, and know the difference.
Right. And also knowing that, I mean, from the readings I've been doing, Celeste, and I'm sure you concur, I mean, you've been on a bit of a sabbatical and you haven't been doing as many, but there's a lot of bubbling up of things like layoffs and like spouses that are
Yes.
getting sick. And there's definitely this kind of like it's a karmic time where people are finishing up old things. So that means like finishing up jobs. So like in the midst of all this like big news and big finishing up on the world stage, we're also kind of doing that in our own lives. And so like how do we make that balance where we care about what's going on in the world, but at the same time we're not letting that rock our world, because we've got to take care of business at home. And ultimately, like if we continue to take care of ourselves, we'll continue to be in a better place to take care of the rest of the world. So that's my little PSA. See, I'm going back to my roots here, which is like it's all going to be okay. Breathe.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so now what we've got here, October 11th is when Pluto goes direct. So Pluto's like, okay, I went back, it went from Aquarius, then it said, I'm going to go back into Capricorn. And we all held our breath and went like, no, not Capricorn again. Not that we don't love Capricorn, but we've had a lot of Pluto in Capricorn since
We've
2000.
had enough of Pluto and Capricorn.
I think collectively everyone can agree it's time for this to go away, like no matter who you are. So anyway, the semi good news is that now Pluto is no longer retrograde. It is actually direct and it is making a beeline. It is looking forward and it is going to go toward that Aquarius. So it's no longer cleaning up Capricorn. It's like it came
It's
in.
not going back.
It's not going back.
You're
That's
not
right.
going back.
It's not going back again in our lifetimes. So unless you live to be 248 years old, like you're good with Pluto and Capricorn. But I was thinking the analogy of like you're mopping the floor and you have to like go mop the floor, right? But then you're headed out toward the door. It's headed out toward the door. You're still mopping the floor. So we're still in cleanup mode, but we're mopping up on the way out the door so we don't walk on what we just did. That's kind of my like it's going forward, but we're moving out of the way. So, because it's going to
Yeah, and
take
Capricorn.
everything it needs in its path with it on the way to Aquarius. So, all right, what would you like to say about this? This,
So Capricorn, the sign of governments and big business. Pluto unearths things, it burns things down to the studs in order to be rebuilt. It's in the ninth house. This could be um, more information about court things, but it also could be a big announcement. You see, Mercury is coming to square Pluto. There's a lot. I mean, and I'm even feeling with this. Well, Mars is on my ascendant, so that's probably why I'm so like I have this like low level, just like a little bit of anxiety.
well, I do think that Mars and Cancer squaring the nodes is like everybody's emotions are tied in a knot, like it's just coming up for us where we're feeling our anger, but we're also feeling somewhat helpless. And I don't know, that one is maybe it's just because I have so much Cancer energy, but I'm paying quite a lot of attention to that one for sure. So this full moon chart is a doozy, people. So I can talk about what I think the positives are here.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Makes lots less. Okay, well, one of the things is that I do believe this Mars opposing Pluto is an amazing opportunity for some inner child work. I think it is an opportunity to do some deep, deep healing around places where we did not feel like we were cared for as children. And I think it is a place that healing can actually take place if we're in the right mindset. So, this is on a personal level. This is what I think is the high road of this opposition. And sometimes I talk about, I saw that like the largest voting block for He Who Shall Not Be Named is Gen X men. And Gen X men are the first really men where, I'm Gen X, and it's the first generation where the mothers went to work and then we were latchkey kids. And there is a
Mm.
lot of confusion and anger at women, to be honest with you. Around, I think there's a lot of wounding around that. I think there's a lot of wounding around the fact that all this traditional roles of women, we were the first generation where there was that upheaval. And I think it was very confusing to a lot of men in our generation. And I think that's why they can capitalize on some of the very misogynistic themes in that campaign, because it taps into some of that anger. And so I do see that being potentially a problem with this Mars opposing Pluto in Cancer Capricorn, where it's the mother father polarity. So it's kind of like, I need a big provider, I need someone to take care of me, and I'm so angry about that I didn't get my needs met as a child, whether that's a woman or a man. I don't want to like demonize Gen X men. I was sort of just making a generalization about Gen X men being the largest cohort who are voting and resonating with Trump's message. But what I would really say here is there is such an opportunity for releasing and deep, deep healing on a personal level, and maybe even on a collective level. So that would be my positive take on this. I would also say that Chiron being conjunct the moon during this full moon gives me this feeling of like there is an opportunity for healing, but we have to be careful not to be too reactive, because emotions and anger might be really high at this time. So if you get into a space of, positive intention to heal versus reactivity, I think you're going to be in a better space.
I agree. Yeah, Mars opposite Pluto is really intense energy, and there's going to be a lot of conflict around this time. I'm also wondering if, okay, so on October 14th is when Venus will be opposite Uranus. So I think that is definitely going to be a story about the Middle East, because Venus represents Israel, because
Libra.
they're a Libra rising, and Uranus is very close to their sun. It's also, I don't know, I looked at Iran's chart, and Iran's sun is at 10 Aries, so the eclipse is opposite their sun. And that can be a bit of a smackdown, and the sun is the leader. So I wouldn't be surprised if something goes on and there could be like even some kind of regime change over there. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I
Yeah,
mean,
this is just
Israel's
a
on the
very,
offensive.
yeah, this can be a very toxic full moon where things come
Mhm.
to light that feel jarring and tragic, or
Yeah, lots of
scary. But it can also,
domestic violence.
yes.
Venus at 29 degrees, the last degree,
Of,
karmic degree of the sign. In Scorpio, life and death. So I see a lot of domestic violence with this. Mm.
in the so that we've got this again for Washington, D.C. So again, in the second house, there's a story to be told here about finances as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
And so, does this have to do with stock markets and, or,
Mm.
something to do with this big stellium, the sixth house, right? Of, the dock workers. So that's the thing about astrology, is we look at patterns and we can kind of get, and I think Celeste would agree, we're both very intuitive, and we can kind of translate these patterns, but there's so many different ways this all can play out. So it's hard to know exactly, but I think one of the big themes that we have to recognize, that I've been coming back to in every single one of my videos, is that all of the outer planets are in their final degrees. And that means that we are just on the precipice of something new. And it looks like almost everything in this chart, except for Saturn, is in like the 20-degree mark. I mean, a lot of things, right? So just keep in mind that this is potentially like a stressful day. So be on the lookout for world news. Don't be too reactive to it. It is an unfolding story, because that Jupiter is still in Gemini. It's still unfolding. But Uranus in the 8th house in Taurus, that can be death. That can be like changes in, like, don't be surprised if, people at this time in a full moon, it's like their journey is over. They're ready to cross to the next threshold, right? Like moons bring things to culmination. So, it's a lot going on.
And in the last week, just before the solar eclipse, all of these Libra type figures, people involved in culture and artists like Maggie Smith, Chris Christopherson, John Amos, all passed away. Yeah, and at this there can be more. But I will say that Israel's rising is 23 Libra. So we're gonna, like, the sun is shining on, illuminating their ascendant. So, and on their across their ascendant descendant. So there'll definitely be a story over there for sure.
Yeah, and with this Mars on Cancer, I mean, I know that everyone in the Middle East feels so passionately about their homeland, and it's right up there on that midheaven. I mean, it's a little bit of a wide orb, but like it's still up there, and it's in the 9th house of, like, my most ardent dogmatic beliefs about my homeland that I have to protect. So it's it's a very complicated situation, and
it is. It's just so horrible. All the people who've been displaced and homeless, and
it's tragic.
The
And
war.
it's not the people, right?
Horrible.
Like
it's not the people. The people suffer when the leaders of the countries and these groups, like, and they have to keep just one-upping each other in violence. It's just horrible.
Right. And so, lots of culmination. So I just wanted to quickly, before we wrap, because we're going to wrap up here, but I wanted to show that this inner ring is Kamala Harris's chart. And this full moon in Aries is sitting right on her natal moon. So there's something going on here that is going to impact her. So just
Absolutely.
something to keep in mind, that she's tied into this in some way. And and so it is October, full of October surprises. Anything you wanted to say on this, Celeste, before I close it out?
There's definitely something going on about her. Maybe, they keep trying to bring up stories about her husband. So maybe there'll be something in the news about that. Yeah.
I've missed that. Okay.
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. So anyway, lots of October surprises in our personal lives, on the collective stage, but those are some key dates to look out for. And just, keep her cool. That's the thing. Keep her cool. I got to remember it too. I've got a Mars in Leo. So like I gotta take it down, not be, don't let myself be reactive. Us Mars fire people, we gotta watch it. So.
Yeah, but watching the astrology unfold. So if you're paying attention to the news with and then looking at the transits can be just so fascinating to see how as above, so below shows up in our lives.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all your insight. And I hope that this has been enlightening for people. And as always, please do subscribe and like and share this information. I always forget to say that, but it does help with the algorithm, and it also helps me stay motivated to keep making content. And every time you make a comment, I get very excited. I'm like, oh, I've got a comment. Thank you. And as always, the universe is conspiring to help us. There is a reason and a season for all of this, even if we don't know what it is yet. It is unfolding for our higher good. So until next time, stargazers.
Thank you so much, Dabney. This was great.